guys. So this is Group A with Meghan, Alissa, Melody, Blanca, and Madison. In our little cohort here, we have 3 elementary education students, four, myself, Alissa, Blanca, and Madison, and 1 secondary education student, Melody. And this is our Affirming Diversities project. Okay, so the driving question here is, what is the best way to incorporate students' primary language in the classroom curriculum? We have to consider that we have many different students from many different backgrounds, and we will almost always have a very diverse group of kiddos. So it's important to make sure that we are differentiating our content for our students and making sure that they're getting the most out of their education as possible. And part of that is meeting them where they are with their primary language in the classroom to assist learning.
Okay, so how does this link to Nieto's 2010? So the quote that we got from the article was, in fact, practicing tolerance is what many educators see as the best indication of a civil and respectful society. I challenge this belief and suggest that tolerance actually represents a low level of support for differences. I submit that tolerance does little to encourage true diversity or help schools develop a multicultural perspective. So basically what this means is that tolerance itself is not enough to support the differences that we have in the classroom. So instead, differences should be embraced and not only endured. So this is basically what the quote is saying.
Okay, and so we chose to use CRT4, which is student-centered instruction, and CRT6, reshaping the curriculum. Basically because the board that we are creating is to be centered around the student, and we're going to be reshaping the curriculum to meet the student's needs. And then, so the justification, this is a way that we can incorporate students' primary language into vocabulary that would commonly be heard in the classroom for that week's lesson.
So there's obviously many beneficiaries to this type of board that you would put into a classroom. First off, being monolingual students, English language learners, teachers, and anyone who would be reading it at all. Obviously, for monolingual students, this would give them an opportunity to start learning a new language, learn small keywords that would incorporate with that lesson. It would give them an opportunity to get closer to their peers who are bilingual or who are speaking with a primary language other than English. For English language learners, it would, 1, incorporate their primary language into the curriculum so they feel not so set aside from other students. And in the board, it has not only the English word and its corresponding definition, but it also has the same, it shows what one word would be in English, it would show its translation to Spanish or whatever the English language learner's primary language is. So it gives an opportunity for students to connect on that level and become closer together, which gives the English language learners and the monolingual students really just a way to come together as one in the classroom. And then I know a lot of teachers and a lot of individuals have background knowledge in other languages and etc. There's a lot of bilingual individuals, but for teachers like myself, I am only monolingual. I only speak English. So incorporating something like this into my classroom, where I'm secondary, everyone else in this group is elementary education, but I'm going to be a secondary science teacher. So I would have one big board for science words, and that would actually give me an opportunity to learn common science words like photosynthesis, cell, etc. That would give me an opportunity to learn what those words are in Spanish as well, or whatever the other primary language would be. So it's really beneficial to anyone who is seeing it and reading it at all. It gives people lots of opportunities to include everyone in the classroom, include the diversity, and just be a nice way to incorporate everyone in the classroom while still learning something new.
Okay, so I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the contents of our project. So we will be using a translation wall instead of the commonly found word wall that you see in the majority of classrooms nowadays. So this will be a wall where students, with the guidance of the teacher, will post vocabulary words for different units in both their first and second language. Like Melody had mentioned before, some of the students in the classrooms here and across the country, some students are only monolingual speaking students, and that's okay, because we want to identify the second language learners, but also incorporate a second language for monolingual students to become familiar with, so that they can be more, they can communicate with their peers who are second language learners on a more deeper level, on a more personal level, because they're taking the effort to accommodate their language and their oral development in a way that's comfortable for their peers who don't speak their first language. So, for example, if we are learning about cells in biology, like Melody had mentioned, we would post on the word cell on the wall with both the English and Spanish translation. So our students would see cellula in Spanish and cell in English on the translation wall under the science section. If there are other languages in the classroom, because we know that it's not always going to be English and Spanish as the two languages that'll be present in a classroom, those translations will be provided as well. For New Mexico and for our circumstances here, all 5 of us are in practicum experiences, and the majority of situations that we see when it comes with bilingual students is English and Spanish. So we're making those accommodations based off of our experiences, but again, this can be modified and changed to fit the needs of classrooms that have different languages.
And to add to that really quickly, I'm currently in a practicum classroom that is bilingual. So every other week, the classroom cycles between speaking English exclusively and Spanish exclusively. And my practicum teacher, her name is Miss Gonzalez, she has a whiteboard with Spanish words and Spanish endings, you know, like ES and EL, and then on the back wall is the same in English. And so additionally, she also has like math vocabulary translated in both Spanish and English, because all over the classroom, and then students refer to it often. So I've seen it be very effective in the classroom, and kids are always referring to it, always, you know, adding, they like to add their magnets. Sorry, I'm kind of discombobulated. They're magnets, so they like to add their own words, and they learn new words, and they put them in the parking lot while they're learning them. And it's been a huge tool for them, especially in like writing assignments, to help them navigate what they're learning with their native language, instead of having to translate and then try and figure out what we're asking them to figure out.
Okay, so
Something actually, yeah, sorry, I was gonna throw some more in here to go along with Megan. I am actually placed in a practicum where a majority of the class, their primary language is Spanish, and my primary language is English. And I can't tell you how many times in the classroom kids will start talking with one another, and I have no clue what they're saying. I don't know if it correlates to the schoolwork, if they're just chatting along with each other. And luckily, my corresponding teacher, he also speaks Spanish as well, so he can kind of say like, hey, get back on track, or see what they're talking about. But if my corresponding teacher were to have a translation wall, I could kind of tune in and be like, oh, if cell is cellula in Spanish, I could tell, oh, the kids are just talking about their cell project or something. So it goes both ways, and it's nice hearing that Megan has been in a situation where, okay, I see that this does work. And my situation, knowing, okay, if there was a poster up like this in the classroom, or a whiteboard that I could refer back to, it's nice to know that it would be actually helpful in a real world setting. So I think that's just very interesting, seeing all sides of the spectrum, really.
Okay, so to wrap up our conclusion, I do want to leave the end of our presentation open to us explaining, just expanding on our thoughts a little bit more. As you can see, we're all very passionate about this idea and implementing it into classrooms, whether it be necessary or not. But this would be what an example of our diversity project would be physically. So because this project and this product is special to each classroom on their own, we didn't want to make a physical copy because we didn't want to put it in a rule box saying this is how it has to be, this is how it has to be for all students, for all classrooms. We wanted to leave it open up to interpretation and to the needs of the students and the teacher as well. So based on all of our experiences, this is what we would try to include in our translation wall. So we would have, like we had mentioned before, the majority of us are elementary education, where we discuss 4 different subjects throughout the day. So that means that there's 4 different groups of vocabulary words that are discussed throughout the week. So for an elementary classroom, we would have science, math, social studies, and reading. And we would discuss, say we were discussing photosynthesis that week, we would put the word photosynthesis up on our translation wall like you would on a word wall, but we would also require our students to translate it into the majority second language, or the second language that meets the needs of the other students. So for example, say half of our class is English speaking and half of our class is Spanish speaking, and then we have one student who is deaf. We would use sign and a sign language interpretation on our word wall. So we would have photosynthesis in Spanish, and then a visual translation of that word in ASL for students to see on the board throughout the week. And I just want to emphasize this again, that we want this to be something that helps the students gain knowledge about a second language, whether in all of our experiences, we have spoken about how we're all monolingual speaking individuals, but we've had examples of this in our classrooms, and it has helped us become better educators, and it has helped us connect on a deeper level with our students. And we want that same relationship for our students to have with each other. So for example, say I'm an English speaking student and Blanca is a Spanish speaking student. She and I are able to connect on a better level because I can communicate photosynthesis to her in Spanish, and she can communicate it back to me just as well in English. So it gives your students who are only first language or single language speakers the opportunity to pick up on a second language, and that exposes them to something that they wouldn't have rather been exposed to otherwise. And again, this would be for all 4 languages. We have a little bit of time left, and to wrap up our presentation, I just want to leave it open to my teammates so that we can discuss on it just a little bit further and how we see this benefiting students and teachers in the classroom. And hopefully with future work, we can begin to implement this into communities. So for example, like we have bathroom signs that say woman or woman in Spanish, and sometimes, or actually all the time, it's even in Braille underneath the sign, making that a normal thing for things to be translated into multiple languages. Because I know that for now, the majority of America speaks English, but in a couple of years, it won't always be that way. So as a society, we need to start moving forward to making those accommodations now for our students so that they're set up for success in the future.
So another thing that I actually just thought of was, I don't know if it was the same for the rest of you in the group, but I thought of this since most of you are, or since all of you are elementary education, there wasn't an option for me, at least in elementary school, to take like a Spanish class. So I think this is a really awesome way to, if a student is just like curious about wanting to learn a little more about Spanish or a little more about whatever the other languages that you are wanting to incorporate in class, it's an awesome way to get all of your students like a little bit of knowledge in a second language. Because I think had there been an option while I was in elementary school or even middle school to take you know, a small Spanish course or something. I think that would have been an awesome thing to go to, because I would have a lot more knowledge now as an adult, because I never even had the option to take a Spanish class until I was a sophomore in high school. So that's already pretty late in the game, and it's hard to actually learn a language that late in your life. But had I started at, you know, 8 years old in first or second grade, it would have been easier to keep up with that throughout life, or even if it was something that was incorporated in every age group. So I think this is a really awesome way just to incorporate another language. Like we've talked about this entire time, making students who are bilingual and monolingual come together, and really just like extending students' knowledge based on what the curriculum says. This is what you have to teach. That is just the baseline. You can always go above and beyond. And I think this is an example of going above and beyond for your students.
I think one last thing to add, I don't want to put Blanca on the spot here, but earlier we mentioned that we're all monolingual. That's actually not true. Blanca is a bilingual person. So again, Blanca, I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you have any thoughts about how this could have or would have helped you or did help you in your formative years?
It actually did help me. When I moved, well, I was first in Juarez in school for 1 year. And then I moved here and they dropped me off a grade level because of my language. I would speak Spanish, but I didn't speak any English. So like when I lived in El Paso, I didn't like speaking English at all because it was the hardest thing ever for me. And then I moved to Chaparral, and the school that I went to, they had a bilingual program. And my teacher, like I used to have 2 teachers, one for English and one for Spanish. So whatever we learned 1 week in the Spanish class, we would learn it the next week in the English class. So every week we would switch. So it was Spanish week and English week. So we would learn the same things in both classes, like different times, of course, but in both languages. And I think that this would have helped, like if I had a single teacher, what's it called? A self-contained class. That I had one teacher and that teacher taught the English and the Spanish. I think this would have been very helpful, simply because it wouldn't, like for the teacher, it wouldn't have required her to be translating every single thing or sitting like with the students, like translating everything, when the wall is there to help the students. So they can make it a routine to access that wall, like it's there for them, and it's there for them to like help them understand the content, or even to request things. Like this can even include, you can even have a translation wall with words like baño, or like restroom, cafeteria, office, like terms that they would use in school or to communicate with friends.
I think kind of going off of like what Blanca was saying, like a little bit, I guess just to make it, how you said, like more interactive with the students. Yes, we want this to be a translational wall to be posted on like and around the classroom, but I also think it could be very beneficial to also have them have like a set notebook to where they can also copy this there, to where say they're doing a homework assignment at home and they need that translation but they can't remember, they can always look back to it and be like, okay, well this is what it is. Or if they want to educate their parents, like, and tell them like, this is what we're learning like at school, look at all of these words. And so I think that can also be very beneficial for them to do it along with you as you're putting it up on the wall in the classroom. They can add it into their notebook that you have made up, like a spiral or whatever, and they can add in for like the science section or the math or whatever you're adding to that day. So I think that could also be beneficial.
And I think now that like technology has advanced so much from when I was in grade school, I think now it's even easier. Like the teacher can actually like just make a document with all these translations, a Google slide even, and just have everything there and share with her students, have it there in their Google Classroom or whatever they use for like for educational purposes, like just have it there for their students, you know, like for them to use whenever they want to.
So to conclude our presentation, I think I just want to touch on some of the keynotes that we made. This is a very, very adjustable project. It is made that way. We made it that way so that it can be adjusted to meet the needs of your students, whether they be in the pre-production stage of their language development or if they're in advanced fluency. It helps the educator and the students come together to work together to address language and the way it works in the classroom. So you could be working with a group of kids who are only Spanish speaking that need to be introduced to the English language. This would be a great way to introduce it to them. We wanted to stress that this can be used from kindergarten to senior in high school. This is a great way to incorporate language throughout the classroom for the students, for the teacher, for the community of the school as a whole. And yeah, I think that's our project. We're very happy with the way it turned out. We're excited to see where it goes moving on with this course. But we really just wanted to offer teachers a way to incorporate language that's not such a stressful way, but it also has a very meaningful impact on the students and their learning journey. So this was our Affirming Diversities project. We hope you guys enjoyed, and we look forward to seeing everyone else's presentation.